But first, doesn't it kind of feel to anybody else like history is repeating itself? The economy feels like, I don't know, spring of 1929, and the debate over your gun rights feels like 1939. That's the last time the Supreme Court addressed the constitutional right to bear arms. That is, until yesterday, when the court heard oral arguments surrounding the D.C. handgun ban. Now, to me, and hundreds, thousands of others, there's no question our founding fathers believed in responsible gun ownership and constitutionally guaranteed that right in explicit terms. They weren't doing it for hunters. They were afraid of big government. Too bad Washington, D.C. seems to have forgotten the whole Constitution thing. Maybe we should move the Constitution to someplace where they might read it once in a while, like, I don't know, in the congressional bathrooms or something. Since 1976, the District of Columbia has banned all handgun ownership except for retired D.C. police officers. The district also requires other firearms, like simple rifles, to be kept disassembled or with trigger locks on. Keep in mind, only lawful citizens obey the gun ban. Criminals, I haven't had a problem with, ignoring it. For decades, D.C. has been the capital for gun crime. This case has both sides of the gun debate holding their collective breath. The court's decision will certainly have a national impact. So far, the justices have repeatedly suggested that Washington's sweeping gun ban infringes on our right to keep and bear arms. In fact, in the words of Chief Justice John Roberts, what's reasonable about a total ban on gun possession? I, for one, couldn't agree more. Wayne LaPierre is the Executive Vice President of the National Rifle Association, an organization I am proudly a lifetime member of, and he was in court and heard the oral arguments yesterday. How did you come away feeling yesterday, Wayne?
Glenn, I came away with what I went in. All human society is best served by good people being able to defend themselves against those that would do evil to them and hurt them. In Washington, D.C., if the glass breaks in the middle of the night and you're all alone there, you cannot own any type of firearm at all to defend yourself against the people that would kill you. And that's not reasonable, and it's unconstitutional, and I believe that's the way the court's headed.
I have to tell you, I'm confused because the Bush administration came out, the Justice Department, and filed a brief that said, you can't go crazy here and give everybody every right. And they kind of, in a way, came out against our right to own guns. And yet Dick Cheney came out, first time a vice president has ever done this, and said, I just want you to know I don't agree with the administration and the Justice Department. What's that all about?
Well, I'll tell you, for the first time in history, more members of Congress signed that amicus brief than any other time. Over 55 senators, 250 members of the House of Representatives, the Vice President of the United States. And I think what that represents is the will of the American people saying this is our freedom, it's our right, it's our individual right, and we are not going to be denied this freedom.
Wayne, I've been reading the Founding Fathers an awful lot because I just think our country is in real trouble. We're losing so much of what we started at. And as I read the actual words of the Founding Fathers and I see what they talked about, they knew that they were afraid of government. They were not afraid of, bears coming out of the woods. They wanted people to have the right to protect themselves against an out-of-control government. When did we lose a court system to this evolutionary law that we have now, where they look at, let's look at what we said back in 1940 or 1939 or 1920. When did they stop looking at the Founding Fathers' intent?
I couldn't agree more. From the 1700s up until the 1950s, it was unquestioned it was an individual right. Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Patrick Henry, Sam Adams, George Mason, all individual right. Justice Story, the most noted Supreme Court justice in the 1800s, other than John Marshall, individual right. When Congress looked at this after the Civil War and said we're going to restore the rights of slaves, Second Amendment, individual right. It wasn't until you got this Miller decision that still said it was an individual right. It talked about a sawed-off shotgun, whether it was appropriate for militia use, but it said it's individual, it's the individual right of citizens. That's been twisted in the last 20 years and turned into a lie that became this popular fairy tale that somehow in the Miller decision they said it was only a collective right of the government. Well, the American public knows better than that.
This has been going on in Washington, D.C. for years and years. It's 30 years. Somebody asked me today, Glenn, how come this is now 30 years on the books and it's just now being challenged? My explanation was nobody wanted to push it on either side because they were kind of happy with the stalemate because you didn't know which direction it was going to come out. Is that an accurate statement, would you say?
Yeah, I think we were trying to repeal it in Congress. The district residents were upset about it, but I think people were worried about people on the Supreme Court legislating from the bench as opposed to interpreting the Constitution as it's written. But this D.C. law, it's been on the books 32 years. It's a miserable failure. It's one of the crime capitals of America. It's taken away protection on the part of the law-abiding people. And the D.C. criminal justice system is a revolving door. If it catches the bad guys at all, it takes them in, it turns them back out. It's open season on the honest citizens, and the honest citizens don't want to be denied their constitutional right to protect themselves anymore. And what D.C. needs to do is when they catch violent felons with guns, drug dealers with guns, criminals with guns, put them in jail. That'll make people safe, not taking guns from the law-abiding people.
Wayne, thank you very much. We'll